Welcome to Anythingbut925, I'm Kevin Crowley, and today we're going to be interviewing Dr. Sean Hunter, clinical psychologist with the NHS in Glasgow. We're going to talk to Sean about his origins coming from the east end of Glasgow and how he became a clinical psychologist and what kind of spurred him to do so. So, take it away, Sean. So, Sean, do you want to give us a small intro about yourself?
Hello, my name's Sean Hunter. I'm a clinical psychologist. I have been qualified for the past 10 years working for the NHS. It's been a long journey to get to qualified stage, so it's taken me 14 years. We grew up together in the east end of Glasgow.
Yeah, certainly did.
So lots of my own life experiences have influenced my career, and it's just feel really privileged to be in the work that the field that I'm in.
Fantastic. So what kind of, as a clinical psychologist, obviously it's probably quite a generic title, but what do you do as a clinical psychologist?
Well, it's an interesting question because no two psychologists are the same.
Mm-hmm.
So my current role, predominantly I offer individual therapy. I also work with families and deliver therapeutic groups as well.
Right.
Outside of that role, I also develop services and supervise other clinicians in mental health as well.
Right.
So predominantly working in the area of mental health and have done since the start of my career.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's one of the things that I really want to kind of find out about it is how did you get to where you are now from the Sean I knew, and I'll be completely forthright with everybody, since primary school. How did Sean, the guy I left out of primary school, turn into Dr. Sean Hunter, clinical psychologist for the NHS?
Yeah. Well, as you know, growing up in the east end of Glasgow, you kind of witness quite a lot in terms of the challenges that people face, and certainly been through quite a few challenges myself and myself and my family. I remember growing up in Glasgow. There weren't many prospects that they told you about in school. There wasn't really an expectation that you would do anything other than, I'm not even entirely sure actually.
Yeah. I kept it fairly ambiguous, didn't they? It was you'll do something, but we're not sure what.
Yeah. And I always had this idea that there must be more to life, and there certainly must be more to life in general for the people around me as well. Because I had this feeling, even at quite a young age, I had this feeling that there was a level of oppression, that people didn't tend to move very far from where they lived, where they were born. Often, there's your life is kind of seen to be set out for you, based on the family you were born into, and that was certainly the impression that I got. We never kind of felt. There wasn't the cliche "you'll never amount to anything," but that was very much the message. And I said I felt that there was certainly something more to life, not just for myself but for the people around me, and I wanted to do something. I wanted to be part of a change, really, even if I can do that at a societal level. Big ideas that at least individually, supporting people, and as you're probably aware, in working class societies, such as the one that I grew up in. Mental health difficulties are rife. And certainly there's been experiences in my own family, and that was an area where I felt actually I understood a bit more, and decided to take that up as a career.
So obviously was there any kind of to kind of define an event for you that kind of made you kind of say this is for me, this is what I can do, or this is where I can make that positive change?
Yeah, I think there's one. I know certainly there's lots of events and incidents that I came across, but I think there's one incident in particular where I grew up, where I lived. We lived in a building, apartment building that we'd call it a close. Good old Glasgow. We call it a close.
Yeah.
And the building was at the corner of a street, so you would get quite a lot of people that would just come in out of the rain and use the close to sit. Often you would find people doing drugs or just to hiding for the police. But there was one incident in particular where I came home. I was coming home from school. I must have been about 13 or 12 or 13, and I couldn't get into my house because on the stairs there was a young couple who must have been in their kind of maybe late teens, early 20s, but there was a young couple completely out of it. They were lying on the stairs, completely out cold, and there was a baby in a pram. And as I said, I couldn't get home without actually stepping over them to get in, and that was probably one of the most harrowing things that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Certainly, as I said, we've been through a lot, in our own family as well. But that was probably the time when I thought there's definitely something's got to change here.
Yeah.
Life has got to, life can't just be this for people. And I had the idea even at that young age. Even if I can't help those two on the stairs, I'd like to help that baby in the pram to have a different life.
Yeah.
And I guess that was the time. At the time I wasn't aware that psychology existed as a profession. They certainly didn't teach it in school. Didn't really make us aware that mental health. We didn't talk about mental health at all in school, really. But it was something that I eventually came to be aware of, and that was my route. That's where I felt that I could make a difference, some small difference in people's lives, really.
That's great. So, give me a kind of timeline of events. So, obviously this happened. What were the? It's probably going to be a long answer you're going to have to give me, but how did you kind of get into the field of mental health from that event, or from high school? Where was the kind of the leap into psychology and mental health?
But it was interesting because I hadn't, even at that time, I did want to try and make some sort of difference. I wasn't aware that there were any fields of work where you could do that. And I was really interested growing up in acting. So 10, 11 years old, I started acting in school and joined a youth theatre called Toonspeak, who are still around right now, and they've done a lot. There's a lot of pretty successful actors that have come through that youth theatre, actually, and one of the reasons why I think is that it was rather than a subscription based youth theatre where you had to pay £30 a month to join and to be part of. It was £1 donation if you could afford it, and it was really there to empower young people and to give them a different way of being, really, and testing out different ideas and growing into themselves in that sense. And for me, acting was my therapy. I came to realise that, actually. So
it's an interesting way of therapy, acting.
Yeah. So it was just really, when I was at school, it was always really quiet. There was reasons for why it was quiet, but teachers would be really concerned, and parents' nights, my mum would get shouted at, "Sean's too quiet," and there was people, teachers were quite worried. And it wasn't until I went up on stage that first time and tried a different hat on, literally, but figuratively as well.
Yeah.
I practiced being somebody else for a bit, and every part that I played, I noticed something about that person that I liked,
Mm-hmm.
and that similar in therapy actually. There's usually one or two things that you really like about a person that you're spending
Mm-hmm.
time with, and as an actor, you're spending time with that character and being practicing being that
Mm-hmm.
person in that
Yeah.
sense. And I came to realise that the qualities that I liked about each character that I played were actually parts of me that I hadn't really tried out yet.
Right.
So I was confident.
Mm-hmm.
I was shy, but I was also confident. You can be both.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever I played a role that was more out there and quite, even some of the villains I enjoyed playing
Mm-hmm.
as well, because they were usually quite confident in themselves and sure of themselves. I was able to. I was able to take what I wanted to have more of, as myself really, and the qualities that each character that I played that I liked. I realised actually,
Mm-hmm.
do you know what? I can have more of that, And so, as I said, acting was my therapy in that way. It really helped me to understand more about me.
Mm-hmm.
It helped me come out my shell. But I also came to a point where I didn't really see it as a career for me, because as I said,
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to help others. And I know acting's not for everybody.
Yeah.
It's not, it's not so it wasn't until I left school and I went to college and was kind of halfway through my acting training that I came to a point in my life where I had to decide, do I take acting forward? Do I make a go of that, being quite a competitive career?
Yeah.
Or do I actually follow my gut instinct and try to help people in some way?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad that was the decision that I actually came to. So I found out about psychology,
Mm-hmm.
that you can study at university, went ahead with that and haven't looked back since.
It's interesting. I don't think there will be many clinical psychologists out there that kind of their entry into the world of mental health was started with drama.
Yeah.
It's probably quite a unique way of going about it. So that's fascinating. Obviously, you then went into psychology and stuff like that. Give me a kind of brief rundown on that, or in fact, don't keep it brief. Just splurge. So tell me. Obviously, went into obviously studying psychology. Where did your mental health career then start from your studies? Was it as part of a sandwich thing, or did you go straight in after studying?
Well, psychology, much like lots of university courses, is quite an academic field.
Mm-hmm.
To start out with, you're not really working with people. You're learning about psychology and psychological
Mm-hmm.
theory and some of the pop psychology ideas,
Yeah.
like when conditioning, learning theory, some of the kind of technical aspects of psychology as well. So when you study psychology, you can be a researcher as well,
Mm-hmm.
or work in mental health. There's lots of different careers that
Mm-hmm.
psychology, or an understanding of psychology, can be really helpful for.
Mm-hmm.
I developed some health problems halfway through my psychology course, my undergraduate
Mm-hmm.
psychology course. I had some issues with my eyes that
Mm-hmm.
I ended up having to drop out for 6 months and repeat a year.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess it was at that point that I really felt stuck, and I thought, the course is 4 years in Scotland. When you do an undergraduate degree, it's 4 years. So it was going to be 5 years for me, because I was going to have to repeat a full year.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought there must be some way for me to start to use this knowledge now,
Yeah.
and to actually develop a real world application of what
Mm-hmm.
what I'm picking up. And it was at that point that, again, growing up in East End of Glasgow, being very aware of what people's experiences can often be
Mm-hmm.
like, I volunteered for victim support.
Oh, okay.
And that was my first foray into supporting people with emotional distress.
Yeah.
And obviously when we talk about mental health problems, there's often an understanding from a very medicalised point of view that if somebody has a mental health problem, that there's something wrong with them, there's something that needs to be treated as such, whether it be medication or, there's something wrong with the way that they think that needs fixed in some way. I've often, and you'll find in psychology there's lots of people that don't have that view, including myself, that we often come at it from it's people's experiences that lead to the difficulties that they present with. And we talk about the stress vulnerability model, that all of us are vulnerable. There's a level of stress that we can put up with. Now some might be less tolerant of stress than others, given their early experiences, but certainly we would say that any one of us can be vulnerable to developing mental health problems.
And that's the stress vulnerability model you're discussing.
Yeah. So the more vulnerable that you are, the least tolerant of the kind of day-to-day stresses that we might have in life. And certainly if big events happen, such as the people that I would support in victim support, of course they were experiencing emotional distress. Whether we would diagnose them with a mental health problem or not is a whole other thing.
Depending on the kind of level of coping that they were doing at the time.
And often, and I'll often say this as well, lots of people that I work with have experienced a lot of trauma in their lives, and one of the messages that I'm often giving is this idea that how you're reacting now, the way that you're presenting, it's a natural reaction to the things that have happened in your life. It doesn't make you deficient in any way. It's no wonder when you look at people's life stories. No wonder they feel the level of distress and they do the things that they might do to cope that might keep them stuck in this pattern. So going into victim support and volunteering there was my first foray into actually meeting with people face to face and supporting them through difficult times. And I guess I probably wouldn't be where I am right now if I hadn't taken that step to practice some of it in the middle of my studies, because I was kind of losing the will at that point as well, because I knew I was going to have this extra year to go, and being able to actually make some difference at that point in time was really kept me going.
Not to sit idle, but to actually kind of get involved still. I suppose in a way that was quite good for you. I mean, looking at this from a complete novice and outsider point of view, it sounds like you were kind of almost kind of keeping your mind exercised for dealing with these things in the future. That was kind of much like some people kind of go in and do a work experience, if you will. You're almost going to go in and kind of getting the experience of handling a whole variety of kind of different kind of cases. I mean, there's only so much you can learn from textbooks. That's the thing, and I guess that's part of it as well. There's I remember in first year of university there were about 300 people in my class, and if you were to ask most of them, they would have some idea that they wanted to go into some form of clinical psychology. But actually that it's quite I went from acting, really competitive, to career, to psychology, that is a really competitive career. But that actually what marked some of us different was that real passion, that real idea, and I think my background was really helpful for me in that regard, that I actually had a meaning to what I was doing. I had a purpose to pursue, and if it wasn't clinical psychology, I would have found another way to do it as well. But I think that's what helped me to get there. You seen the kind of seen the symptoms that you could, or firsthand the symptoms you could diagnose, or what's the correct? You're the doctor. What's the correct word?
Well, I mean, again, it's again when we talk about symptoms, and I often talk about symptoms as experiences in and of themselves. So if somebody who's anxious, for instance, who might be feel too anxious to go out, and they might shut themselves away and be really isolated. Now, yeah, you can talk about social isolation being a symptom, but it's also one of the things that understandably somebody might be doing to try and reduce the anxiety that they feel, but it's also inevitably keeping it going.
Got you.
So yeah, but we recognise patterns of behaviour or patterns of coping. I guess the term symptom, yeah, we do use the term symptom. But again, that sometimes kind of sounds a little bit kind of medicalised in that sense.
It loses the kind of, not the touchy-feely vibe, but the kind of personal touch thing, because you're making it a bit clinical, So you obviously went and did that. What else kind of did you do? Where did you go from there, from that point?
Well, after I finished my undergraduate studies, there's a little bit of a gap that people often find when they finish their psychology degree. Where do you go from there? Well, often that's a difficult time in terms of whether somebody actually takes it forwards as a career or not. But one of the things that I was really keen on doing before going into the clinical psychology field was to get even more experience in working with people with mental health problems. And I worked as a support worker in Edinburgh for a company called Penumbra. And it was a supported accommodation service where there were 7 people that lived in the house who had come out of quite long-term inpatient psychiatric care, and the main job there really was to help them to reintegrate into the world. Some of them spent most of their adult lives in hospital, didn't have the life skills that they needed to survive.
Institutionalised.
So that was my first job that I did that for 2 years, and I still miss it. I guess because there was something about that you kind of at times you felt like a flatmate. You were there. You were there just to be another person, to be a mentor, to guide people through life really, and building their life skills. And there's something that I really enjoyed about that you don't. I only get an hour with somebody now. Sometimes a couple of hours depending on what we were working, but that support worker job, you'd be there in that house for every day, for a set number of hours, and then you really got to know people. We get to know people now, but there was something about being in.
They made it quite rewarding. All right. So obviously you kind of did that. What was the next step from there for you? Kind of go in your career. So what did you do after that? After the kind of support worker role?
After my role as a support worker, I took up a master's training course in psychological therapy in primary care. And primary care is just like your GP. Primary care would be the kind of mild to moderate end of mental health difficulties that people present with. And so it was very much a hands-on training. Really completely the opposite from my undergraduate. You were actually working with people right away in applying cognitive behaviour therapy, which is, as you've probably heard of it. It's one of the most common, one of the best supported therapies for a range of mental health difficulties. So it was a really good kind of solid grounding in CBT in particular. And from there, that's where I went on to do my doctorate training.
Right. So in terms of could you give an example of how cognitive behavioural therapy works? Yeah.
So those, you said it's something that likely lots of people will have at least heard of, because it's quite well publicised now. You see descriptions of it on television as well, and lots of ideas and self-help books that we can benefit from. But cognitive behaviour therapy, one of the kind of underlying principles of it is that the understanding that it's not the events that happen to us on a day-to-day basis that make us feel the way that we do. It's how we interpret those events. Now, of course, obviously, if there's major life events, they're obviously going to affect how we feel. There's, might be devastated by a tragedy in our lives, for instance. But generally, on the day-to-day basis, it's how we interpret the events that we come across.
Mm-hmm.
So, just to give an example, you're walking down the street, and you see somebody that you know,
Mm-hmm.
and you know them quite well, and they're walking towards you, and you wave to catch their attention, but they walk right by. What do you think would be going through your mind at that point?
For me, I think if somebody didn't catch me, or didn't see me, or for me it would be a case of they have something going on with their lives at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to leave them to it,
Mm-hmm.
or it it'll be probably a judgment call between that, or well, that's your loss, buddy. And move on. It'll be one of the two, and there'll probably be a kind of a gut reaction or a gut feeling as to what one I would kind of go, depending on Kevin's judgmental pendulum.
Yeah, because it's quite an ambiguous situation, isn't it? There might be lots of reasons why that person walks right past. So the first one that you said there was that there might be something going on for that person, and that's okay. So again, that interpretation of it doesn't really involve anything negative towards yourself there. It's often you're kind of looking at that person and possibly trying to see where they're coming from, and what some of the reasons might be for them walking right past. Somebody who might be more predisposed to having the negative beliefs that we often see in depression might be more likely to interpret that situation in a very different way, in a very specific way as well. So they might have an idea of, what have I done? That person's just ignoring me. What have I said? Have I offended them in some way, or do they just not like me? Is that what it is? They just don't want to speak to me. And so if somebody interprets that very ambiguous situation in that way, they're more likely to feel really bad about themselves.
Right.
So they're looking for the problems within
What's wrong
themselves.
with me?
Exactly. Yeah. And so in CBT, what we might do. So the C in CBT is what we call cognitive cognitions, thoughts and emotions, and that refers to how we interpret the events. So that person's cognition, who might be experiencing depression, for instance, will be more likely to be a negative thought about themselves, and that's how they would interpret that situation. So some of the work that we'll be doing is first of all noticing those thoughts to start off with, noticing that predisposition to thinking about things in a particular way.
So creating an awareness.
Exactly. Yeah. And part of that also involves taking a step back from our thoughts. So instead of believing everything that goes through our head 100%, because that's what it is. We have a thought that pops into our head, and often we believe it because it feels like a fact when it's in our head. We're so certain about it. But when we take that step back from it, we can see the situation. We can see that there are multiple ways of interpreting that situation. Why would we favour one over another?
And then it becomes that person's vulnerability, or not vulnerability, it sounds a bit too, but that person's disposition at the time that kind of makes them kind of go to that process, So that must be, for somebody in that situation, it must be quite tough if it's quite a negative view they have of themselves. Yeah,
because it can be so, our beliefs, and we often, in CBT we also talk about core beliefs, the idea that are these all-encompassing beliefs that we have about ourselves, about the world, and about the future. And we form these beliefs at quite an early age based on our early experiences. So if somebody, for instance, experiences a lot of rejection or emotional abuse, they will expect that to be the way their life is going to be for
what they deserve.
Often that as well. So that's the C in CBT, the cognitive. So we'll work with somebody to help them to challenge some of these thoughts, so that they don't, at least they don't believe them 100%, and they kind of notice that there's other ways of thinking as well. The B in CBT is behaviour, obviously, and go back to that same example of that person walking right past you. Now, if you had the belief that or the thought that that person's just ignoring you. Now, as you say, the example that you said there is that's their loss. That's fine. Yeah,
I can be very brutal.
But it would make it less likely for you to reach out to that person, wouldn't it? You wouldn't necessarily want to kind of get in touch with them and
yeah. Rightly or wrongly, I think I sometimes have the thought process of they need to work that out. I don't think I'll be the man to help them out with that. Yeah, I'll check in with them and see how they're maybe in a while to see how they're doing. Yeah, so you would check in with them. Yeah, but I think it's not that I kind of value self-reliance because I understand that people have certain people need certain levels of help. So I just don't know where to calibrate for people. But yeah. Yeah, and again,
it's a really ambiguous scenario. So again, that person who might be experiencing depression, for instance, is with that thought that person just doesn't want to speak to me. They're far less likely to get in touch with that person and check in, because the problem's not with them. It's with that person. It's with them.
They're the one that's in need.
So they might not want to impose themselves on the person who's just walked by, and that might be a friendship that's gone because of that. So that's one example of how people can become really quite isolated by their interpretations of the world. So the B in CBT is behaviour. We help people to think about ways of doing things differently, living life differently, and making different decisions, testing some ideas out. So it's where the CBT, where the C and the B go together. We can test out the beliefs that we have by changing our behaviour, by picking up the phone and talking to that person and finding
by challenging
it. Yeah, exactly. So so that's CBT, and as I said, it's one of the most evidence-based therapies for a range of problems that we come across. It's not the only therapy, but it is. It's the most publicised one.
I would describe it as behavioural troubleshooting.
It's almost as well. We often talk about it as it's. We're supporting people to become a little bit more objective and scientific in their life, so be a little bit, think a little bit more critically about what's going through their head, and part of that is about problem solving and
mastering your emotions a wee bit. That's. I mean, we could probably spend hours just talking about. I know. Well, I could spend hours asking you about CBT. So obviously you use that as you were doing that as kind of part of your masters, and kind of developing that. So obviously you're a doctor, so I'm assuming that the end of that section of that chapter is that you got your masters. Yes,
got the masters. So the doctorate study in clinical psychology, it's a 3-year training course where we take our already kind of the experience that we've developed already, and we build on that. We gain experience in working across the lifespan. So we work with children and children's mental health services. We also work with older adults. Learning disability is another specialism that we experience, have some experience in. I've always kind of been more about the adult mental health side of things from the beginning of my career, and so my areas of interest have been what we would call intrusive experiences. Right. So there's a kind of range of difficulties that often they're not grouped together as such, because they are quite different in some ways, but there's a similar phenomenon to a range of difficulties. So intrusive experiences include trauma, for instance, where people describe flashbacks of memories of events that have happened in their lives. Also obsessive compulsive disorder, we often see intrusive thoughts as the issue that drive somebody to try and neutralise that thought, or to try and do something about it by carrying out the rituals, so hand washing to prevent something bad happening. But the actual intrusive thought itself is what drives that. And also psychosis, where it's a term that's more widely used now than it used to be. It used to be that we would normally associate it with the diagnosis of schizophrenia, where people will have unusual experiences, such as hearing voices that nobody else can hear, or having quite odd beliefs. Some of them can be quite grandiose, such as beliefs about being a famous person, or can be quite frightening, such as that they're being persecuted in some way. So my specialty is that kind of cluster of difficulties where people are experiencing intrusions into their mind or into their life, really. So that's one of the main reasons why I took up the doctorate training, because in primary care we wouldn't really work with lots of these presentations, and that and certainly some of the kind of family experiences were more kind of linked to those experiences than in primary care as well. So, but
and obviously, then we achieved the doctorate. Otherwise, we wouldn't be calling you Dr. Sean.
Yeah. Some credit cards.
Oh, lucky you. I was going to go for general, but they wouldn't allow me.
I only use the title if I'm complaining about something. Like if I'm phoning up and they'll say Mr. Well, actually, it's Doctor. Other than that,
it's I'm in the kind of fortunate position. My mother and father-in-law are a doctor and dentist, or were. They're retired now. But I used to kind of go, I would love to have that as some sort of kind of title at the start, But yeah, so. One of the, obviously this is not getting the stages to a doctor is not an overnight thing. Give everybody an idea of how many years this took to achieve.
Well, I'm sure there are people who can do it a bit quicker than I did, because I did go on a little bit of a tangential route, with it being a support worker and doing the masters as well. All in, it took me 14 years.
Wow.
To qualify, so that includes the 5-year undergrad, that's usually 4, and a couple of years as support worker, the masters, working in various psychological assistant roles, to then go on to do the 3 years doctorate.
Do you think the path you took was? I mean, there's no. Do you think the path you took gave you the best tools for doing what you do now?
I think it did. And I think my background as well, I know we've kind of talked a little bit about this as well, but I think coming at it from a very much a working class family background and growing up in the area that I grew up in, I'm not saying that I've got unique insight to everybody that I'm working with in that sense, but I think it gave me a real grounded experience and a real maturity to approaching it. I think that's one of the things that really helped, and it also helped me to kind of take that little bit of a tangential route, because it then meant that I was building skills in other areas, and developing a wider awareness. So one of the areas of psychology that's allied to clinical psychology but not quite the same thing is what we call community psychology. Community psychology is very much the idea that at a societal level we can change things. Not just psychologists, but in general, we can change things, and we need to be mindful that society is experiencing lots of problems of its own. So each individual that we see
is a cause and effect version of what's going on potentially.
So often, you know, and one of the things that came across as well. So if the only string to my bow that I had was CBT, not to say that CBT can't help people who are having a difficult time in life currently, but if the only string to my bow was CBT, you know, I support people who are living in houses that are uninhabitable, that are in, you know, at risk of being re-traumatised, you know, and at risk of further abuse, and therapy doesn't, you know, therapy won't fix these things, you know, and I think where I've, you know, the route that I've came through, it's given me more of an awareness of when to use the tools that I have through clinical psychology training
for said scenarios.
And also when to actually say, do you know what, therapy's not going to help you here. What's going to help you is getting the right other support, you know, and being more aware of what other support is out there that can be needed. So whether it's about actually, do you know what you need is some help from Women's Aid. You're in an abusive relationship right now. That therapy's not going to. You know, I don't want to be sitting here working towards making you feel better about being abused. You know, not to say that happens anywhere. But it's, you know, I think the route that I've taken has helped me to be more aware of what. I think it goes back to when I was at college and I decided to go into psychology. One of the lecturers at college said to me, Sean, just remember that psychology is just another form of philosophy. Now he said that to me 19 years ago, and I still remember that, and even I wasn't really sure what he meant at the time. Of course, but it really does. It stands out as, you know, we don't all have the answers here. Just because you've got a doctorate doesn't mean you know everything. And again, I think the route that I've taken's kind of helped me to be humble about it. You know,
it's obviously this is a podcast and an audio version of that. What's really fascinating is as you're talking about these kind of subjects, it's how wide-eyed and kind of passionate you get about it, which is really, really great to see. Especially in a field that, after a certain period of time, with the certain pressures involved and with the various kind of challenges you must face, you know, it's great to see someone that's still got that kind of level of passion. You know, you usually kind of see in the scenario of people not giving up per se, but that spark's been drained away. So what is it about your role, or what is it about what you do at the moment that's you're passionate about and that you love, you know?
I think I touched a little bit on it earlier, but there's this idea of, I just feel immensely privileged to be a part, even a small part of people's stories, really. In helping people to make changes in their life and to change the course of their life. I remember what that theatre company, you know, what TuneSpeak did for me, and how that completely changed the direction that I was going in my life. But and to be able to give at least some of that to other people, and to see them grow, really. As I said, we only meet people once a week usually, over a relatively brief period of time. I mean, I guess the longest that I would work with somebody is, certainly it's quite rare to be working with somebody over a year. Sometimes 2 years, depending on the complexity of what they're going through. But to see people, you know, notice that there's more to life than what they have now, and also, you know, I'm not there to kind of point them in a particular direction, but to make them aware that there's lots of directions that they can go, and to be able to see people grow in confidence and be able to make other choices about their life.
See them grow from the person they were to the person they are at that point, with that help.
And I guess there's there's something that you might come across on Facebook quite a bit. Is about, sometimes you get these cheesy quotes that
the motivational
you come across, and when I see them, some of them are like, yeah, no, that's a bit cringy, but there's a few that I really like, because it really captures some of the work that I do as well. When you talk about this idea that trauma can be something that a family experiences and that can be passed through generations, and all it takes is that one person to acknowledge that and to heal for themselves, to either heal the wounds that have been passed down, but also to prevent that from being passed on.
Yeah.
And it makes me think about that couple on the stairs. And it made me wonder where, what wounds was it that they inherited, and what did they... And again, this isn't about blaming parents or blaming, the people who came before, because they weren't in the position to heal in that sense. But the idea that all it takes is one person to change that course. And it represents what I've been able to do in my own life as well, which but I would say that when you see these posts on Facebook, when you see about healing yourself, there's one of the things that that came across recently where it said this is something that's running your family until it ran into you.
I like that, yeah. Break the cycle.
Yeah. And that's why I like working with families as well. Actually, it can be a very healing process. Therapy can do a lot in that sense.
So we've obviously, I've kind of touched upon, you probably deal with a lot of challenges. You must be, at the end of the day, there must be days where you're just mentally and emotionally kind of worn out. What is it that Dr. Sean does to unwind from that and decompress? What is it you do?
Well, just to give you a hint about what that might be, my wife got me this cup that I bring in to work with me, just to let people know that I'm not just a psychologist. And what it says on the cup is clinical psychologist by day, zombie slayer by night.
And what zombies would be would be that you're referring to?
Well, yeah, of course. I'm a gamer.
Yeah.
I like my games. And yeah, it's something that I've it's been part of my life since my childhood as well. From having my Commodore 64 sitting in the middle, sitting in the corner of the room, playing games, shutting the world out for a bit. That's what I still do. Really, I think I do less of it now than I would have, because I think it, much like anything, if you you can lose yourself, and I certainly work with quite a lot of people that have that experience of wanting to shut the world away,
and fall into the world, the virtual world.
Yeah, and it's everything in moderation, as they say. It's a bit of a cliche, but actually it's about your values as well. The idea of sometimes having fun is just as important as the work that you do.
Getting stuck in. Yeah. Work hard, play hard.
Yeah.
That's fine. All this, it's very, very humbling to kind of to listen to, for you to come on the podcast and kind of tell us about these kind of what you do and stuff like that. And it kind of puts a face to someone in the mental health kind of, because I think too often you kind of hear these stories that are either horror stories or it's stories of another bureaucratic engine at work, that's not really helping people. But it's lovely. It's great to kind of hear about your story and how you're helping people, and it does it kind of. I think it definitely, having you on here kind of definitely gives creates a character for people to know that there's people like yourself in the NHS that are there to help them and stuff and grow as a person. For people who would be wanting to kind of pursue this passion into the world of mental health or psychology, what would your advice be for them?
I would say, I mean, there's certainly lots of different routes that you can take. I took a particular route that took me down the road of clinical psychology, but there's lots of other things that you can do. Each step that I took along the way could have been an end in itself. So support work was, again, I loved that job. And there's not an awful lot academically that you would need to have. It's life experience really that you need to have to be effective really with in support work, and I would certainly recommend that as a road. One of the forms of therapy that I use, that I practice a lot, is what we call acceptance and commitment therapy. And there's a message to that that's quite similar to some of the 12-step programs where it's about accepting that there are things in life that we can't change, but also that there are lots that we can change, and it's about making that commitment to changing those.
It almost sounds like a non-religious version of the Serenity Prayer.
Pretty much, yeah. That's it's a very similar message. It doesn't make reference to God there, but yeah, I mean, often it can be a powerful thing for somebody to have their faith and to make use of their faith and draw from their faith to overcome the obstacles that they come across. The reason I bring it up as well, though, is that often people get really stuck in their lives and they don't really know what to do. Maybe lots of people listening to your podcast as well, and it's one of the reasons why I was really interested in taking part of your podcast, is that this idea that for some people a job is just paying the bills, and life outside that is the money that they earn from their job is to have a life outside their job, which is great. I can totally get that. But if you're doing something for 8 hours, if you are in a 9 to 5, make it something that you enjoy. Make it something that actually, when you think about your values, when you think about what's important in your life, and this is the same that I would say for anybody that's interested in working in mental health, for yourself and the people that you might support, it's about your values, what's important in your life. What we're often spending a lot of time doing is putting a lot of energy and effort into avoiding the things that we don't want to happen, or we don't want to have in our life, and we lose sight of the opportunities and the things that we can do and the things that we can have. And I think for anybody that's wanting to get into mental health as a job, there are lots of barriers along the way that you might come across, whether it be having to go to uni to study if you want to be a clinical psychologist, whether it be dealing with your own difficulties. That's an important part of it, that actually you need to be looking after yourself before you can look after other people. So being able to be open about your own experiences and to come, to do what you need to do, whether it be going for therapy yourself. That can be a really good way of doing it, actually, because it gets you an idea of what it feels like to be on that side, or taking part in other organisations. So in Scotland we've got SAMH, the Scottish Association for Mental Health, but there's also other charities there you can get involved in, supporting people, but also being able to talk about your own experiences. So I would say, there's lots. You don't have to go down the route that I've gone in. It's 14 years is a long time.
He was just pulling a cringe face, folks.
But there are other ways, and it's about being true to yourself and finding out, being truthful to yourself. Really, is the thing that I'm doing right now doing anything for me? Or is there something else out there that I can be doing, whether it be outside your 9 to 5 or whether it be another 9 to 5? I think that's, if you can get up in the morning and say, or at night, depending on when you work, and say, actually, this is meaningful, the thing that I'm doing today is meaningful in my life, then you're on to a winner, really.
Yeah, that's great. So, the one question, obviously we've discussed mental health, obviously because that's your career. For someone who feels as though they need help and support, but they're not sure how they go about it, what would your advice be for someone like that? Someone who feels that, who's either ready to accept help or feels that they have a need for help. Yeah,
there are quite a few routes these days as well, actually, which I think can be really helpful, because not everybody wants to go to the GP. Not everybody feels comfortable talking face to face initially. There are lots of organisations, depending on where you live. I mean, I don't want to be too specific about any particular areas, but your GP is often the first port of call. Lots of areas have primary care mental health services where you can self-refer. There's usually websites to go on to as well, and you can email or fill in a form for yourself. There's also the Samaritans helpline, which is something that's nationwide. Samaritans are a really good service. It doesn't have to be a mental health related, and you can give them a call to just offload if you really feel that you're in a crisis point, or if you're really struggling with things. So, as I said, there's a range of ways of accessing. GP's generally a first port of call in Scotland. In other parts of the UK, you'll have what you call IAPT services, increasing access to psychological therapies, and they're usually self-refer, if not your GP. GP's probably the best bet to get some information about what you need as well, but having a look online as well, and looking at the Samaritans website. There's a website that I use quite a lot. A friend developed it, so we can
feel free to plug.
It's a website that's got lots of self-help resources. It's called Mood Juice, and if you go onto Mood Juice, you'll see a range of difficulties that people might be experiencing, and you can print off or look through a self-help booklet, and there's some contact details on there as well, for any kind of ongoing support as well. So there's lots of it, and talk to families, talk to your family as well. Obviously sometimes that can be really difficult, but communication is key. You know, I mean, I often think, when there's a saying that I use in my family work, when stress comes in the window, when stress comes through the door, communication goes out the window, and things can be nipped in the bud if we can learn to talk about things as a family. There are family therapists as well that can offer support to families, depending on where you live. Sometimes they're only accessible privately, but I would say that actually lots about mental health is about feeling alone, and if there's somebody that you can reach out to, you're not going to be a burden. That person that's just walked past you in the street, they probably have just only had their own stuff going on. They'd probably appreciate a phone call. Reach out, speak to people around you.
I thought it was very important to ask that question, because if there is anybody that listens to our podcast and obviously hears yourself and stuff like that, I wanted them to kind of have an idea that there is someone there that can help. So that's great. One final thought, just before you've mentioned you're a gamer. What's the game you're playing currently at the moment?
I tend to kind of flip between different games. I'm playing through the Far Cry games just now, which is kind of I'm not really liking the skinning the animals. You kind of need to do it to progress in the game, but you're like
Virtual Peter will be all over that. That's great. Well, Dr. Sean, it's been fantastic. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
And that's us. Thank you very much. Thank you again, Dr. Sean, for being a guest on the show. If you wish to find out about any of our guests, please go to our website, www.anythingbut925.com, 95 as in the numbers, and click on the affiliate links page. There you will find information about all of our guests that have been on the show, along with their websites and social media. You can also find us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter and YouTube via @anythingbut925. Please remember to subscribe, rate and review the show so that we can know that you're listening and to keep creating more episodes. If you're interested in being a guest on the podcast or you would like to recommend someone, please email us at anythingbut925@gmail.com. Thank you for listening. I hope you're all doing something you love today. Cheers.